Hey, good afternoon. This is Stacy Warren, and I'm here to do a persuasion speech this week. What I'm speaking about today is something that's actually very important to me, and that's conservation, preservation, and maintaining our natural resources, actually, not just here in Florida, but globally. But here in Florida especially, development along with farming and many of the industries that Florida has and how Florida was originally settled have caused our environment great harm. Biblically, what this is called is stewardship and protecting the natural resources of the planet. Most people know and understand that natural resources on our planet are limited, especially clean water. Our schools actually teach, starting in high school, the effects of human impact on the world, and the new approach to that is taking a historical look on how humans over the course of time have constantly and considerably damaged forests, damaged rivers, just stripped the earth of its natural resources. And most people also understand the significance of protecting the planet by recycling and going green. But not too many people, even though they understand and are knowledgeable of the effects, actually participate in the efforts. The Bible talks about the value of human beings along with the planet and the animals and the resources. And most people are familiar with that story in Genesis. But there are actually a number of Bible verses that talk about the environment as well as protecting it. We all know God created the earth. John 1:3 states, "Through him all things were made. With him nothing was made that has been made." And it is my belief that God created the earth, and that there's so many biblical principles sorry about that. There's so many biblical principles that have to do with the environment, but primarily that everything, including creatures and natural resources, are part of God's creation. God uses the earth to teach us things, and God asks us to take care of His creation. Florida was settled largely in part by land being deeded for 5 cents to 25 cents an acre in the late 17 and 1800s. Over the last 100 years, much of Florida's natural resources, including the Florida scrub and many wetland areas, have been destroyed by land development, home development, as well as golf courses and farming industries. Florida's natural environment is called the Florida scrub, and what you see in the Florida scrub typically are oak trees and pine trees, sandy soils, very extreme conditions, and here in Lakeland Highlands in particular, we are on a ridge system, one of the few in the state actually that have the scrub. Last year, the Ledger actually did a front page editorial campaign about the Florida scrub jay and the fact that it's an endangered species here in Florida, and it outlined statewide with a map and all kinds of other information about this endangered species and why the scrub is important, and one of the only places on earth where over 300 to 400 different plants and animals live. I'm going to turn this over right now to the Circle B Bar Ranch and Reserve, just so you can see a picture of that. But during last year in my ecology class, we actually did an in-depth study of ecology, water quality, and things, and how humans have impacted the world. 2 of our field trips included going to Circle B Ranch as well as Lakeland Highlands Scrub. This is a map of the Lakeland Highlands Scrub area, and you can see it's very big. Polk County and the Polk County Commissioners actually have done a really good job over the last 20 years purchasing Florida lands and preserving and restoring them whenever possible. The Lakeland Highlands scrub sits over 230 feet above sea level, which is very significant because much of Florida's lands are flat and non-mountainous. What you will see through the center of the state and along the east coast of Florida are 3 or 4 different ridge systems. There's one down by Avon Park, there's one here in Lakeland Highlands, there's one along the beach of Titusville and Cocoa Beach, and there's one in Lake Wales. These ridge systems can only be found here in Florida, and they're millions of years old. If you go to the Lakeland Highlands scrub, for instance, and go past the oak hammock, go past the marshy area, and into the actual scrub, what you'll see are fine white sands, much that you would find at St. Petersburg Beach, Paso Beach, or all on the west coast of Florida. And what these were small islands millions of years ago where certain birds and animals lived. Because Florida was underwater, what's grown here since are plant life that can only be supported by sandy soils. And sandy soil, Mayaca soil, is actually the state soil of our state. What I particularly like about living in Florida, and Lakeland in particular, in Polk County, is that there are many places where you can go and hike and actually walk the trails, see a lot of the nature and the different species that live here. And I find that it's a peaceful place and it's very important. And if you spend any amount of time in these conditions, you can see how really unique and extraordinary these lands are. If we don't make efforts to protect them, what is going to happen is like what's happening now with the gopher turtle and many other of these species, is their natural environments are becoming smaller and smaller, and they're dwindling, quite frankly. And in the scrub areas also, because there's so many home developments, we don't allow nature to take its course. And millions of years ago, the way these animals survived was periodically there would be fire. And fire would actually control the area, keep the plant life and the pine trees at a certain level that would provide ground cover for a lot of these animals that are very tiny. When you don't have prescribed burns or allow fire to take its natural course, nutrients can't go back in the soil that these areas need, and the scrub ends up becoming overgrown and can't support its own plant life or habitats. The Circle B Bar Ranch is another interesting area that also has areas like the Highland Scrub, where they have high areas, low areas, marshy areas, forest, hammock areas. And this is a home of the Peace River in Lake Hancock. The Circle B Bar Ranch was a very large farm 100 years ago, and the farming fertilizer, the Bahia sod that was introduced into the area, as well as farming in general and the cattle ranching, destroyed the area around the Circle B Bar Ranch and Reserve. Polk County bought this from the state a while back, and you can see here with these pictures, and what they've done is make an education center here on site of this restoration and preservation area. So this is actually the Circle B Discovery Center, and you can view different lecture series. They teach you about water quality and why wetlands are important, and they talk about invasive species, maintenance of the properties, and why it's important for us to restore the Peace River and the Lake Hancock River Basin. This is inside the Discovery Center, and you can see that there's a kids interactive area, which is very important. A lot of the local schools have field trips here because they're trying to educate the students starting in elementary school on how important it is for water quality and wetlands to be preserved. And this is the marsh along Lake Hancock at sunrise, and you can see how big this area is. Right here, though, is where things are overgrowing, invasive species, water lilies, and all kinds of things that affect the actual potential for wildlife to live in the water. There are hiking trails here, as well as the original farm site. And you can see this is the interactive map of Lake Hancock and the Peace River. What you see here between Lake Hancock and Banana Lake, this is actually all floodplain that's been destroyed. And the Circle B Ranch is also one of the largest conservation areas for alligators, as well as birds, and people travel from all over the country to see all the different birds that migrate here every year. There's over 500 species of birds that come here, as well as butterflies. If we don't protect the wetlands in particular, what's going to happen is the overall water quality and water quantities that we have available will dwindle. We use the aquifer a lot because much of Florida still operates on wells, and without clean water and plentiful water, humans can't survive, nor can the planets. And this is my persuasive speech. It probably isn't my best speech. However, it is important ethically, morally, personally, and biblically to protect the planet and our natural resources. And I encourage you to write to your commissioners and local representatives to make sure that these lands are not destroyed and that there are efforts made to protect the lands. Have a great semester or great summer.